work in the theatre industry are just incredibly stressed out at the moment because they've been closed for ages, no revenue, and it's a business that needs lots of people to be in the same place at the same time. And theatres are included in the unlocking in England, but in the sense that you're allowed to go in and work in a theatre and maybe do a rehearsal, but not have any audience members there.
That's right. And it's not just a huge industry in London. Of course, the West End comes alive, packs people in. But in lots and lots and lots of parts of the country, the local theatre is a hugely important part of the economy. It gets people into town in the evening. Of course, they, go off and spend money in other places. And it's a really, really big part of the economy. And of course, our cultural life as well. And nobody quite knows if and when it will be able to get back and running.
Well, we understand that Oliver Dowden, the Culture Secretary, is poised to unveil a 5-point plan. There's always a number and a number of points. And apparently we're up to point 2 now, which is that you could have rehearsals. And point 3, which he hasn't put a date on, is going to be outdoor theatre can go ahead, and maybe some indoor theatre, but with the audience quite far back. So the first few rows out of action, but we don't know when that will happen. Anyway, let's talk about all of this stuff with, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, Dame Judi Dench and David Tennant. Hello, both.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast. Now, you two have actually done a bit of lockdown acting together, haven't you, on stage, which you can watch on iPlayer.
Very true, yes.
Well, David did a lot of it. David wrote it and was in it and told us what to do.
I didn't quite write it, but you came and stole the show in the final episode, Judi, as you do.
We had a very nice time.
Let's watch you in action, and then you can give us some advice.
Sorry.
Stop bleating, please.
Sorry. Hello.
I'll be with you in a second.
Joe says flowers, question mark.
Yes, that's fine.
Champagne.
That's fine. Oh, I hate this bloody machine. Why can't we go back to cups and strings? I'm asking you, why can't we go back to cups and strings?
Yes.
Whatever you want.
David?
Sorry, I didn't realise you were joining us.
Well, it would have somehow lessened the impact, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
You've grown your hair.
Extensions, actually.
Oh. Michael?
Judi.
Are those extensions too?
No, this is all me.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Dame Judi, I was thinking it might have been an acting challenge, but that just seems very natural.
No, it wasn't. It was very, very challenging. Because what is so curious about this kind of system is that, on stage, people, you might get one actor who's speaking to you, who's looking at you, but the others really aren't. But when you do something like this, everybody's looking at you. So you feel it's very onerous. You suddenly think, oh my God, it's my turn. And it may not be at all. So it's not like anything I've ever done before.
Can I ask, before we talk about the very serious business of what's going to happen in the theatre now, did anyone, Dame Judi, ever have the courage during that process to mute you?
To mute? What does that mean, mute you?
Turn you off, switch you off, turn the volume down.
I expect all over the world. Oh, mute you. Oh, yes. I think they've rarely heard my voice. I expect I'm muted all the time.
David, lots of other sectors have got dates or at least the sense of when they might be back, even if they're not coming back in England in sort of 10 days' time. But for the theatre, it just looks so bleak.
It does. Well, of course, the theatre is a very particular thing, isn't it? It needs a room full of hundreds of people to work. So there isn't really an obvious way currently for it to come back. The theatre's closed in the middle of March, and that's it. They're gone. There is no revenue. It's interesting what you were just saying about, because I heard that on the 4th of July they will reopen, but not for performances, which doesn't seem to make any apparent sense. I don't quite know what you would do there. You need to have a full house. Theatres operate usually on relatively small profit margins, so they are not going to work if you have to block off every fourth seat or whatever the solution might be. So we need to find a way of bridging that gap so that the theatres can not avoid collapsing in the meantime.
So if the government does unveil this 5-point plan, as they're probably going to do in the next few hours, and the next stage is some outdoor performances and some very small performances with a very small audience, you just think that doesn't cut it? That's basically no good.
Look, we'll take what we can get. I mean, everyone understands the safety of the audiences has to be paramount. No theatre wants to, invite people in only for people to get sick. I think that there has to be a solution where we get some sort of help, and that has to be on a government level to keep these theatres going until they're able to reopen properly.
Dame Judi, I get, as we heard there from David, there's that fear of, you know, regional theatre perhaps collapsing and never coming back. And then I guess losing the pipeline of the next generation of actors who cut their teeth there and might just decide to do something else.
Quite. And also, I feel not only for the actors, but I feel for everybody. I mean, there are so many people involved in running a theatre. You know, it's just you know, the people you don't see, the stage doorman, the man who does the lighting, the carpenters, the you know, everybody, and there's kind of no guarantee. And as David said, I don't know how, for instance, you would do a comedy if you had people kind of sparsely sitting, which indeed, again, we have to say, if we're going to obey the coronavirus lockdown, which we must, but I don't know how that would work, because I don't know what feedback you would get, nor do I know how the audience would enjoy a play if it was like that.
Well, actually, on that issue, Judi, there was a government paper published yesterday. It was this review into the 2-metre guidance and whether it could be reduced to 1 metre. And they have a table where they talk about theatres, and they suggest the idea of a screen between the cast and the audience. Could you work with that?
I expect so. Could have a play about a goldfish, couldn't you? No, I mean, that's a very trivial thing to say.
But David, that takes the fourth wall to new levels, doesn't it?
I also don't understand the logic of that. What is that? That protects the cast from the audience. But what about the audience from each other and the cast from each other? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't think they're actually pursuing it. It was just one of the ideas that they looked at. David, I mean, you're not one of the impresarios. You're not a money man. You're an actor. But I mean, do you have any kind of figures in mind for financial help that the government could provide to the industry?
Well, like you say, I don't understand stuff like that. I don't know how much it needs, but I know that it needs enough so that when we do come out of this, the theatre can be the engine for economic growth that it is. The one statistic that I always find fascinating is that for every pound of public money invested in the arts, £5 is returned to the exchequer. So there's no charity in that. That just means that is an industry which will be part of the economic recovery if it can survive to reopen properly. And that's the bit we need help with right now. That's the bit that's looking a bit shaky. 70% of theatres say they won't make it past Christmas. They won't make it. 70% of theatres. That's, nearly 3/4 of the theatres in the country disappearing unless there's some kind of bridging mechanism put in place. That's massive. That would have cultural implications forever.
Dame Judi, I suppose just to you though, listening to that, some of our listeners and viewers might be thinking, well, come on, it's a nice to have, the theatre. Okay, we've been through a national crisis. Public money has to be spent on the things that people really, really need. But what does it make you think, or how would you defend it to people who say this is a nice to have? Oh, well, it's a bit sad if the lovers are disappointed, but there are more important things to get on with.
I mean, I think that as David says, we pay our dues to the economy, and also we're famous for our theatre and our theatre tradition here. And I think during lockdown, for instance, everybody has turned to seeing films and streaming of plays and things like that. It is something that I think you need. Not everybody, of course, goes to the theatre, but I think the majority of people would miss their local theatre, or being able to go to the theatre in London. I mean, when you hear that the Vic is in trouble, and the Nuffield in Southampton, and you just wonder, are they going to open again? Are they just going to go to the wall?
Now, our entertainment as political journalists has been watching the daily Downing Street briefing every day, which is just finished. Did you get to know any of the characters at the podium? Could you imagine playing any one of them yourself? I don't know.
Is this David?
David, I can see you
David,
maybe as
I'm handing it to you.
starring David Tennant as Professor Chris
It's
Whitty.
Chris Whitty. Yeah.
And Dame Judi, did you ever tune into the briefings? What did you think of it as a kind of a bit of a bit of theatre?
Not much.
Oh, what? Because the script was boring or the performances were rubbish?
Both. Both. I mean, I watched so much, and then I'm that very, very noisy theatre goer who got up and left the theatre, I'm afraid.
Who was the worst performer? Forgive me for asking you such a bold question.
You get to be the critics now.
How could I say that? How could I say that? How could I possibly say that?
I mean, drama works when it's plausible and feels like, relatable to our real life, doesn't it? And there were a few moments when it's very difficult to see the plausibility in driving 30 miles to test your eyesight, for example.
David, did you find yourself watching with a sort of actor's eye in terms of the body language, in terms of the language that was used in the exchanges between the people behind the, behind the lecterns?
I suppose you do inevitably, don't you?
Sorry, David.
Go on, Judi.
I think that's quite good to use later. I think probably some of these performances we've seen probably will come out in certain things later. See, my head actually rather.
While you're getting ready to play
Where are
Boris
you going
Johnson
with
there by doing your hair in his style, Dame Judi, I've got to ask before you go, do either of you actually have any work booked in the near future, David?
I was in the middle of filming something. I was Phileas Fogg. We'd done an episode and a half, and we all. So I'm waiting to see if these hair extensions will ever be used again. Like every other industry, we await news on when we're allowed to start again.
And Dame Judi, what about you? Anything did you have in the diary?
I was about 2 days after the lockdown. I was going to do 2 weeks at the Bridge with Giles Brandreth, in conversation with Giles, because we did in conversation for the Richmond Theatre to raise money for the Richmond Theatre, and then we were asked by the Bridge if we'd go and do it there. So that's rather a convenient thing, because that doesn't require any rehearsal. It's just a conversation, and that perhaps could be done at some point if it ever happens again.
David, seeing as you were just raising the issue of eyesight tests, I was wondering if among small regional theatres, is there one in Barnard Castle?
Good question. I don't know.
I don't think there is.
I think there is. I've just looked it up.
Is there?
Oh.
Yeah, I think there's one called the Witham or the Whittam. A little like the
that's what he
Home
was looking
Secretary's
for.
parliamentary seat. Anyway, yeah, something for everyone in Barnard Castle. We offer theatre, music, art, dance, film, comedy. And
Opticians.
classes.
Eyesight tests.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, both of you. It's been lovely hearing you in our headphones, and and to everyone who works in the theatre industry, I kind of hope you're okay. Does sound like there's going to be a 5-point plan, but maybe not necessarily loads and loads of money. Certainly not yet. But David and Judi, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
very
thank
much.
you everyone for listening, and we'll be back with another episode very soon.
Bye-bye.
The Coronavirus Newscast from the BBC.